Okay, here we go. Um, Today we're talking about church discipline again. Our goal will be, as you can see here, we're looking at it again. When we're doing that, I know it seems like we're beating a dead horse, but this is a subject that's rarely taught. When it is taught, many times it's poorly taught, and so it's greatly misunderstood, and so we just need to kind of beat that dead horse because we don't understand the horse that is church discipline. Okay, we're going to do it today by asking three questions. There's not really a set passage. We're going to be looking at different verses, but we're going to ask three distinct questions to kind of centralize in our mind what church discipline is all about. Okay, so you see here, the first question is church discipline a loving thing to do? Obviously, you see in the passage, you see in the paragraph there, that the most common response would be when you hear about church discipline, that somebody say, that's not very loving. Aren't we called to love everyone? And yes, we are called to love everyone. The problem is that we do define love in an unbiblical way many times. We define love merely by what makes us happy or what makes us feel good, and that's not biblical love. I mean, because it would, if I had cancer. You see the example there. If I had cancer and a doctor told me I had cancer, I would. That's a very loving thing to do, even though it wouldn't make me happy to hear that from him. It's a very loving thing to do because he's sharing with me a very serious situation. So love has really, we can't connect love with emotions when it comes to many things, especially when it comes to discipline, because discipline's painful. We're going to see in Hebrews later that it's momentarily bothersome and painful, and so we don't like it, but it's good for us as well, as we're going to see. So love and feelings, as we see, are not always synonymous. So have somebody read Galatians chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, where Paul talks about recovering and restoring a brother in sin. And just, ask those questions below. You see those four questions. Maybe you can think of some better questions. The goal here is to get them thinking about how this is a loving thing, and it's a good thing, and it's a way we bear one another's burdens, and it's a way we show gentleness toward one another by actually concerning ourselves with the spiritual welfare of one another. And then we're going to move on to question number 2, which is, what is the goal of church discipline? What is the goal? What's its intended purpose? Are we just aimlessly disciplining people left and right, or is there a purpose in it? We see that it's very loving, but why is it very loving? It's loving because of the biblical purpose behind church discipline. It shows that others are actually concerned with the state of our souls, and so that's a very good thing. And so what we're going to do is read these passages here. You're going to have a few different passages here. Have somebody read those and ask those questions. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15, you see emboldened there, Jesus says, when you go and confront a brother and he listens to you, you've gained him. What does that mean? The goal is that you're restoring someone. And mention the term restorative church discipline. That our goal in church is to restore people. We're not to practice retribution. That's what we'll see next week, which is wrong and evil. We're not practicing retribution. We're not trying to punish them excessively. We're trying to restore them. But you can't be restored unless you've shown how far you've fallen. And so we're trying to gain our brother, but we gain them by showing them that, hey, you've fallen, and you need to be recovered. Have them read 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 5 through 8. Now, this is the story of the man from 1 Corinthians chapter 5 who had an affair with his stepmother, if you remember the sermon last Sunday morning. And so you see that Paul here is talking about this man being restored, and answer those questions, and once again emphasizing that the goal was his restoration, not just him to wallow and to be allowed to have excessive remorse or to excessive guilt. That's not the goal. The goal is to be restored and to be fixed and to be returned to the church. Now, I've included at the bottom 2 questions here, 4 and 5, some kind of ethical questions that we need to answer. Because of the nature of the world in which we live in, people are coming out of very great sins. People are coming very shocking sins of homosexuality, sins of adultery, pedophilia. How do we respond to that? Are we able to fully restore that person, or do we accept them back on modified terms? Is that biblical? That's things we need to think about. So think about those 2 questions. Let them think about those. 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 10 through 13. 13. Once again, Paul talks about godly grief producing repentance, and so talk about that. Once again, he's probably highlighting that same person from 1 Corinthians chapter 5 that has been repented of. He had that godly grief, and it produced genuine repentance. And I asked some of those questions there, but the whole goal of that section is to emphasize that, hey, the goal of church discipline, the point of church discipline, is to restore people, not to beat them up, not to make them feel worthless. It's to confront them over their sin so they would acknowledge their sin, because we're concerned about their soul and we want their soul restored. And then we're going to go on to question number 3. What does church discipline say about us? What does it say that we're being disciplined? Does it mean something? You get that passage there from Hebrews chapter 12, verses 5 through 11, talking about God disciplining us, and that's a sign that we're His children, just like we discipline our children. I don't discipline someone else's children, but I discipline mine. It's because I love my children more than I love that other person's children. I care for them, and I want them to be protected from foolish ways. And it's the same thing with God. It shows that He cares for us. And so have them read that passage and just answer those questions there. The general teaching there that shows that God cares for us. So the presence of discipline, what does church discipline say about us? The presence of discipline means that we're God's children. If we are allowed to remain in sin without any consequences, obviously that's a sign that we probably are not God's children. So that's the key point there. And just ask those questions and focus their thoughts on that conclusion, okay? That the goal is to understand that discipline is a sign of sonship. And then you can close up by reminding them that we're going to look at some of the negative things about church discipline next week that we need to avoid. It can be done very, very poorly. All right, I hope this video helps.